welcome back to the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio. That is I. We're going to do something different today. As you can see, I got somebody sitting next to me. This is Daniel.
Hello.
Say hi, Daniel. Daniel's a friend of mine. Daniel is my collaborator with my little YouTube channel. He's also a client of mine. I'm a personal trainer. So what I would like to do today is probably do one of the passions that I like to do so often is interviews. I want to start a new series of just interviewing fellow freethinkers, fellow atheists, and we're going to dive into their background, how they came to know the understanding of the supernatural realm and how they came out of that into a life of non-God belief or atheism or humanism. So basically, that's what I want to do periodically. So we're going to just entitle this Interview with an Atheist. And Daniel is an atheist. So basically, before I begin to ask Daniel questions, I'm going to embarrass him and put him on the spot. This guy right here is probably polar opposite in many ways than I am as far as personality, intellect, definitely. Daniel's probably one of the smartest people I've ever known. He's a physicist, man of science, and here I am, a former fundamentalist Pentecostal preacher who knew nothing of reality other than the scripture in the Bible till 15, 20 years ago. So we come from totally different backgrounds, but we came to the same understanding that there is no evidence for anything supernatural, and we believe in naturalism, the natural world. So my objective here is to get you Christians to see that there are many types of atheists out there. Many of them are scientists, many are engineers, many are people that are just like me, personal trainers. We come from all different backgrounds, all different personalities. I'm a very overt, outgoing person. Daniel is a guy who's a mathematician, physicist type guy. Not quite as outgoing, but he's a nice guy and he's brilliant. So I'm going to turn it over to him and ask him a few questions. So to start out, Daniel, I'd like you to tell the viewers just a quick little background of your childhood, how you were raised and brought up into the faith. And then I'll ask you another question. So tell us about your childhood, Daniel.
Okay, sure. Well, my experience with religion is that I went to a Catholic grade school when I was little. And my parents had kind of an odd relationship with religion. We did go to church every week, but we didn't talk about it very much outside of church. Mm-hmm. So it was like a habit that we did, and then of course I had to learn about all of this stuff when I was in grade school as well.
Okay. Did your parents encourage you to focus on religion or the supernatural? What was their background? What were your parents' background?
Well, my parents are both doctors. And so they're pretty well educated. They did not require me to learn anything in particular about religion. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what their thoughts were at the time. Mm-hmm. I know that overall there were certainly advantages to the Catholic school as opposed to the local public school. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't think that this was necessarily a bad decision that I was sent to the Catholic school, mm-hmm. I mean, relative to the other options.
Okay. It's interesting because we come from a very different background with Christianity. You've heard my story from the fundamentalist, Pentecostal, charismatic, evangelical type background. It was just pure Bible and loving Jesus and all that. And then you have someone like Daniel comes from a very different background, maybe more, what do you call it, more moderate Christianity, maybe liberal to moderate Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, not so fundamentalist and so forth. So Daniel, when did you come to the knowledge that there was no God? When did you know that you were an atheist. You didn't believe in a God anymore.
Well, I never believed in the religion classes that I was learning in school. I was familiar with other mythological stories like Greek mythology when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see, this is just the same kind of thing. You've got some just so stories, how the snake lost its legs, which according to the Bible it had at one point.
Yeah. The talking snake.
Right, yes. Yeah, they don't explain how it stopped talking. But, I didn't like the way that the priests and the people teaching me this stuff were attempting to control my behavior, or tell me what was the right way to act, because I felt perfectly capable of deciding on my own
mm-hmm.
how I was going to behave. So I didn't like that aspect of the religion, and I didn't like going through the rituals, let's see. And I always thought the priests were really creepy. I couldn't quite understand why somebody would want to give up having a family. I thought that was a bizarre decision.
Yeah.
So the thing that really kind of made me turn away from this stuff. Before,
mm-hmm.
I was just kind of ignoring it,
mm-hmm.
really, and was when I learned that you're supposed to have a calling from God
mm-hmm.
to enter the priesthood. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, these
mm-hmm.
people actually think that God is talking to them and that he beasts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that I mean,
yeah.
Of course that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't make, I mean, and, I had tried praying once or twice, but I mean, it felt silly.
Yeah.
So that was really, I refused to go through some of the Catholic sacraments, and mm-hmm. I went to middle school and high school in the public schools.
Okay.
So that was really it. I didn't. I wasn't ever really fooled by it, and I kind of grew up with this idea that religion was for stupid people, and that mm-hmm. naturally an intelligent person would not fall for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been
mm-hmm.
fairly recently that I started to understand that lots of intelligent people go through some real struggles
mm-hmm.
to find their way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was a question I had for you too. It's not even on my script here, so let's forget the script. Let's just talk. So, do you think that for me, of course, I have a totally different background than Daniel. I was discouraged from going to school or secondary education. After high school, all I needed was the Bible. The wisdom of man is foolishness to God. That was my background. That was the scripture, and I'm quoting the Bible.
Yeah.
So, do you find, or do you believe, Daniel, that that intelligence is required for someone to actually come to that point in their life when they use reason and rationality over what I call motivated reasoning or emotional type of reasoning, which I don't call reasoning anyways, but to determine whether there's a God or not? I mean, do you think it takes just pure intelligence, or do you think it's helpful and beneficial for those? Because, face it, some of us, I wouldn't call myself by any means anywhere near your IQ. And by the way, I try to steal his IQ when he's training. if I've got him down there to do push-ups, I kind of sneak over here and grab some IQ from him and put him in my head. But tell my viewers here, the viewers, about intelligence, how it relates to God belief or non-God belief.
Well, I think that there is a big difference between intelligence and intellectual honesty. So, and a difference between innate intelligence versus the intelligence that you can develop. I think that, I mean, people are born with more or less flexible minds that have different innate abilities, but everyone can become more intelligent by becoming more facile with abstract concepts and just getting more practice thinking abstractly and getting into the habits of using a good epistemology. I think that a lot of the reasons that people get stuck in religion has to do with bad habits of thought that aren't necessarily stupid, but people get into the habit of not being intellectually honest with themselves for certain things. So there can be a lot of emotion surrounding the questions of religion. But a person who believed strongly in truth and in distinguishing what they can know from what they can't would have more of an interest in overcoming their emotions when they think about various questions. And this is something that anybody can get better at. But I would say that if you find that you don't like the idea of asking certain kinds of questions, then those are probably the ones that you should most want to ask.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, inquisitive minds want to know, right? Let me ask you another question. This is something I run into quite a bit with people I talk to quite often. When I explain and offer to Christians the alternative to Christianity, which is humanism or just having a wonderful life without God belief, I usually get arguments from Christians using the cosmological argument of design, pre-Big Bang, how it all began. So I'm going to ask you, what is the most common argument that Christians make for proof of the evidence of a God? Your experience when you've talked to Christians. And I'm sure the people you talk to are a little more into maybe more rationality or reason, or maybe of a higher education and so forth. So the Christians you've had dialogue with, what do you think is the greatest argument or the most common argument that they would use to prove that God exists?
Well, I mean, I think that I don't argue with Christians that often. I try to every chance I get, but I think that something that people say very often is they'll say religion comforts me, or I like having an idea of my place in the universe. So they talk about the emotional aspects of their beliefs, and they give reasons that aren't logically connected to the likelihood of the truth of the beliefs, I prefer to talk about that kind of stuff because all of the philosophical arguments are so silly. I don't really want to talk about that stuff very much.
Right.
But if somebody is telling me that the only reason they believe something, or the main reason, is that it feels comforting to them, that's an outright statement of self-deception. And I don't see any other way that you can interpret that. So I would disagree that it is comforting to believe something that you know isn't well substantiated. If you realize that, then you can't really treat it like it's likely. So I don't think that it really makes sense to say that this would be comforting. I think that it's really it is a way of not trying to avoid thinking about certain things. It is an intellectually dishonest thing to say. And I think that it is pretty easy to get people to see that.
Okay.
You always got to steer people towards the idea of faith. Get that right out at the beginning, or comfort, which is that's kind of the same thing.
Sure.
Because then that's sort of the silliest part.
Yeah, it is, and we could go on for hours on this. So I want one more question here for Daniel. And I get this all the time from Christians, and I've gone with this a minute. So the questions I get all the time are, how do you know what is right and wrong? How do you know what is ethical and moral if you do not believe in a God? If you do not have the lawgiver, the divine lawgiver. So Daniel, personally, what would you say to a Christian if they were to ask you, well, you're an atheist. How do you know what right and wrong is? Why are you not out there killing and pillaging and stealing and raping and eating babies and drinking their blood? Whatever they think that we do, a lot of people think. So real quick, just a couple minutes, how do you know what is right and wrong? And how do you know about ethical behavior and morality as an atheist?
Well, I mean, I would say that I think most people would intuitively understand that they couldn't have a society if they didn't have some way of cooperating. And I think that there are going to be certain kinds of rules that people can follow which allow for a better society and which are individually beneficial to the people following them. Under certain circumstances. And I don't think that there needs to be anything other than that for people to cooperate nicely with one another. I don't think that there's some metaphysical sense in which anything is objectively right or wrong. I think that people I think that intelligent beings can benefit by relying on one another, and that means following rules that are going to convince one another that they're not some kind of live wire. They're someone who can be relied on themselves.
Good, and that falls right in the line with situational ethics, which is a decision-making based upon the circumstances of a particular situation. And I even think some Christians would even agree to that too. I mean, it's based upon each circumstance and situation. We have to use reason and so forth. Otherwise known as rational morality versus the religious morality. We discussed that before. So, well, listen, I'm going to end right now because we've gone probably close to 20 minutes. So I want to thank Daniel, a friend of mine and my client, and as you can tell, a very intelligent man, a man of science, a physicist. So thank you for coming on the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio. Woo! What a grip! Guy's getting strong. And
Okay,
show me your
thanks.
bicep muscles.
Okay.
Look at that. Look at those muscles.
I don't think that's objectively impressive, but sure.
He's getting stronger, and he's really doing good. So, anyways, thank you so much for watching the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio. Remember, no God is required for a life of love, joy, peace, fulfillment, meaning, and purpose in life.